Hello guys, welcome back to another tutorial. Hit the bell icon button so that you don't miss out any tutorial.
Now you may think that when it comes to testing and optimization that I'd have several different programs for you to look at. And that may have been true about 10 years ago, but now I can tell you that Google Developer Tools is pretty much the only thing that I use. It does that much. So we're going to be using Google Developer Tools, but all modern browsers have similar tools and functionality. So what are developer tools? They allow us to test, examine, and debug front-end code. They provide us access to the internals of the browser and the web application. Developer tools are different than website builders. They're not so much used to create, but to test code and examine code. And these tools can come as add-ons to the browser or as built-in features. And all of the main modern browsers such as Chrome, Firefox, IE, Safari, they all have built-in tools now, which wasn't always the case. I may be wrong, but I think Firebug for Firefox was the first major built-in developer tool released. Alright, so before developer tools came along, coding was much harder and debugging was much harder. We had to do things like alert calls to test values, instead of just logging them to the console. The browser gave you minimal errors, which, if they even gave you errors, and sometimes you'd have a line number and sometimes you wouldn't. Sometimes it would give you the wrong information or the wrong line number. We had to use third-party debuggers, which might have been nice, but they were really difficult to work with and integrate. And Browser Developer Tools fixes all of this stuff and gives us much more to work with. So here's some benefits to Google Developer Tools, or pretty much any developer tools. It doesn't have to be Google. Many of them do the same exact thing. Full console logging. Alright, so the console works as a logger as well as a command line interface where we can run JavaScript. We can edit code in real time. We can also edit the source files so we can actually make permanent changes. DOM element selecting, we can select any element in the page and get that HTML. We can optimize with profilers. There's a powerful JavaScript debugger where we can add breakpoints, we can pause the code, and so on. Resource viewers, we can view the local storage, all the cookies that are saved in the browser, things like that. And then there's also network and analytic tools as well, so we can optimize the speed of our page. Alright, so inspecting and editing code, you can see a screenshot here. We can inspect all the HTML, all the CSS, and we can also edit it. So we can add, remove HTML elements, attributes, CSS styles. We can move elements around. We can edit links, search code. Okay, these are just some of the things we can do in this console. So working with the JavaScript console, we can log diagnostic information, and it's also used as a shell prompt, which can be used to interact with the document. Alright, so we can actually grab elements in the document through JavaScript, and we can do different things with them. Debugging JS, and we can quickly discover the cause of the issue and fix it. Makes debugging much less painful. You can see down here we can set breakpoints, and when we get an error, it'll show us the line number. It'll show us the exact spot in the code where the error is, and we can actually edit the code there in real time. So we can also improve network performance, and we can look at the different requests that our browser makes. This provides insight into the resources that are requested and downloaded. We can identify requests that take longer than expected, and then we can fix them. And this helps optimize your web page speed and reliability. We also have the ability to create audits, which analyze pages as they load. These provide suggestions and optimization for speeding things up. Alright, so we can improve rendering performance as well with the timeline tab. We can see the most of the load time is being spent. Events are then plotted on a timeline. Storage inspection. Okay, so if we're using HTML5 database or local storage, session storage, cookies, app cache, web SQL, and IndexedDB, if we're using any of those technologies, we can actually manage the saved data from within the Right here it's the Resources tab, but I believe now it's the Application tab. Alright guys, so we're going to jump in and take a look at Google Chrome Developer Tools. Now in this video we're going to focus on the Element section. Now to open Developer Tools you can go to More Tools and then Developer Tools. That'll make it pop up. You can also click F12 by default and that'll make it pop up. Alright, now notice that we have a bunch of tabs up here and we're on the Elements tab right now. So that's used to inspect your elements, and I just have a very simple HTML page here. I have it open over here and I'll bring over the CSS. Let me see. Okay, so that should be the CSS right there. We just have some body styling, header with padding 10 pixels, and a container. Alright, the container is going to make it the width 80% and move it to the middle. Now if you look over here you can see we have the body styling, and it tells you the file that it's in. Okay, it's in the style CSS. We have the body styling, but you'll see that display block and margin 8 pixels. That's not in my CSS. It's not in here. This is coming from the user agent style, the user agent style sheet, which is basically coming from the browser itself. All right, so you will see styles that are added by the browser. All right, now over here, notice that when I hover over an element, it'll also it'll highlight up in the browser window as well, and you can see that we can extend these out and to see the rest of the code. Now we can also edit HTML and CSS right through here. So let's say for this div that wraps around that middle section, we want to add a class to that. So we're going to say add attribute, and then we'll put in class equals showcase. Okay, so now that has a div of showcase. Now if I reload the page, that's going to go away. It's not going to save it. This is more for testing and just to see how things look. Alright, now we can also add CSS. If we go over here and say new style rule, and it says dot showcase, notice that it started out with the dot showcase because we have it highlighted over here. Alright, and then let's put some styles. We'll put some styles in here. Whoops. Alright, so let's say background. Click enter. That'll bring us over to the value. And for the value, I'm going to put a hexadecimal value in, which is C36CB0. Okay, it gives us a purplish color. Alright, and then we'll click enter. Let's make the text white, so we'll say color white, and let's see, we're going to add padding. We'll say 100 pixels top and bottom and 10 pixels left and right, and let's do font size 21 pixels. Alright, so now we have some styling in the showcase. I also want to add style. I want to change the font size for the H1, so I'm going to add a new style rule, and we're going to say showcase H1, and we'll say font size, and let's change that to 60 pixels. Alright, now I'm going to add style for the header as well. So if we click on header, over here we already have a style declaration for header, so let's click in there, and I just want to add a background, and that's going to be a hexadecimal value. It's going to be 450 and A38, okay, which gives it a dark purple, and then we'll change the color to white, and there's our header. Alright, let's see what else we want to do. Let's make the list items look a little better. So I'm going to go to where we have the UL, and let's go ahead and add an attribute here. Let's give it an ID of list. Okay, and then over here we'll say new style rule, UL list. It's already there for us, and let's give it a list style of none, and we'll give it a padding. Let's give it a padding of 20 pixels, and then also a background of hexadecimal value CCC. And let's see, oh, you know what, I wanted to do the list item, so I'm just going to change this right here to UL list LI. Okay, and then we're just going to add a margin as well. We'll do margin bottom. Okay, so margin bottom, let's say 10, and we'll do 5 pixels. Alright, so there's our list items. Okay, so it looks better. This is really nice for testing and just seeing what things would look like in real time without having to go into your file, save it, go back to the browser and all that. Now we should be able to move items around too. You'll see we have the list items. Let's go down here, and let's say we want to move this one down. We can actually drag it, and we'll bring it down. Whoops, there we go. No, it didn't bring it down. Oh, there we go. So now you'll see that item 1 is now right here. So we can move things around. It gives you a lot of flexibility and freedom when you're working with HTML and CSS. We can also view this in other views, for instance, a tablet or a mobile device. If we click that, so you'll see that this is at 600 by 382, but we can change this. Let's say we want to look at it at 400. And it'll make it smaller. The height, we can change that as well. Alright, so 400 by 694, and we can do different zoom. We can zoom in. Alright, we can actually view it on different devices. If you want to see what it would look like on a Galaxy S5 or a Nexus 5X. Alright, because they can vary slightly. Different applications and different websites can look different depending on what device you're looking at them on. Alright, so that can be very helpful if you're developing a mobile app or something like that. We can also hide elements. So let's say we wanted to hide the UL. If we go, we say hide element. Okay, that'll get rid of it. And we can go back and uncheck it. You can also delete elements. Let's say we wanted to get rid of this list item. Say delete element. Now there's only 3. What else? We can collapse, expand. We can copy. If you want to copy the elements, markup. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. And we can flip around through elements down here as well. Just gives us a nice layout of the DOM. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and stop here. I will include the initial HTML and CSS as well as the HTML and CSS that we just added. I'll include both of them in the program files. Alright, because if we reload, you'll see that it goes away. It's just basically used for testing, things like that. There are ways to add a workspace using sources down here to make it so that your changes get saved, but I'm not going to go into that right now. Alright, so that's going to be it for this video, and I will see you in the next. Alright guys, so in the last video I showed you how we can edit our HTML and CSS from right in the Elements tab. Now that's great for testing and things that are going to be temporary, but what if you want to save it to your actual file? What if you want these changes to be permanent? Then for that we can go to our Sources tab, and you can see we have the file structure over here. Now if I go and I try to edit something in this index.html by default, I can't. Okay, it's not letting me change anything. Alright, I can highlight, but I can't type anything. So what we have to do is add this to our workspace. So over here on the sidebar, this is the folder right here that contains the index.html and CSS. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say add folder to workspace, and then I'm going to find it on my in my disk here. So let's see. I have it, where do I have it? C drive and projects, DevTools, sample 1. And I'm going to click OK. And now, up here, let's see, DevTools request full access. We're going to say allow. and now I can type in here. Alright, so now we can edit it right from Chrome. Now let's go down to this div, and we're going to make the same changes we made in the last video. We're going to add a class of showcase. Alright, and notice that there's a star next to my index.html. That indicates that we can save the file. So if I do Control S, that star goes away. So if we go and reload now, and look at the source over here, you can see that the div has a class of showcase. Alright, so let's go back over and let's add the rest of our edits here. Alright, so the only other thing I want to do in the HTML is add an ID to UL. I'm going to add an ID of list, and we can go ahead and save that. Alright, and now let's go to the CSS and open up style.css, and we should be able to edit this. Alright, we're going to go and add .showcase, and let's see. Let's throw in a background, and let's say color white, and let's give it a padding of 100 pixels by 10 pixels, and a font size. We'll do a font size of 21 pixels. Okay, and then we'll click save. Now it doesn't update right away, but if I reload, you'll see that it does update. And notice that when I reload, there's another style.css. This is kind of a staging file, alright, so we can make changes here that won't actually change to the disk. But I'm going to just X that out, and we're going to directly edit this one. Alright, so let's add to the header here. Just going to paste in a background and a color, and let's make that white. Alright, and then we're going to just add, let's see, the showcase H1. I'm going to give that a font size of 60 pixels. And let's see the list. Let's do the list items. So we have a UL with the ID of list, and we want to style the list items. Okay, and I'm just going to grab my CSS and paste it in. Alright, so let's do a Control S to save, and then if we reload, you'll see those changes have been made. Alright, so this gives us a way to use Chrome to actually edit the source code that we have on disk. Alright guys, so whenever you visit a website or an application, your browser is making all kinds of requests. Requests for the HTML, the CSS, JavaScript, and so on. Chrome Developer Tools allows us to view a timeline of requests, and we can identify bottlenecks and other issues. Alright, we can tell the file sizes, how long everything takes to load, and so on. So what I have here is, let's take a look at the folder with the application. So we have our index file and then a JS folder, a CSS folder. Inside CSS, we have a simple style sheet, which I just have a body style on. We have Bootstrap CSS, which I got from getbootstrap.com. In the JS folder, we have our script, which is just this. I just put a function, a greet function, variable, call function, and a random loop. All right, it doesn't really matter. We're just testing the speed of the page. All right, then we have jQuery and Bootstrap.js, the non-minified versions. All right, so let's go ahead and run this. Now I'm running it in a server, a live server, so all we have to do is, as long as you have live server installed, just say live server, and I'm going to use port 8000. All right, so let's open up Chrome Tools, and let's click on the Network tab. All right, so down here you can see all of our files aren't loaded, so we're going to just refresh everything by holding Shift and then clicking Reload. And now you'll see that all of the files pop up down here. Alright, so if we look at these, you'll see that this is the index page. Okay, this is the root document, the index.html. And you'll see that it has a status, and 200 is the status for all of these, and that means okay, everything went okay. If there's an error, like maybe there's a 404 error, which would give you a 404 status, or maybe a 500, which is basically non-reachable. Gives us the type. So this is a document, style sheet, script, initiator, which is where it's linked, which is our index. The size, okay, you can see, so the HTML is 1.8 kilobytes. The Bootstrap is 143. jQuery script is 261 kilobytes, so that looks like that's the biggest. And then it also gives us the time that it takes to load. All right, so this whole script, this index took 11 milliseconds. jQuery took 10 milliseconds. And this timeline is basically just a visual representation of the speeds. All right, so they're all relatively the same. And then down here, you can see that it took 155 milliseconds to load the entire thing. All right, so your goal is to get that number down when you're creating an application and you want to optimize the best speed possible. So that's what we'll try to do. Now, up here, you can also filter through the different types of files, all the JavaScripts, all the CSS, and so on. All right, so let's go. I want to download a plugin for Chrome called PageSpeed. PageSpeed Chrome. I think it's called, PageSpeed Insights. Oh, I don't want that. I want this right here. All right, and we'll just say add to Chrome, add extension. Okay, so now you can see the little button up here. Now this is telling us that there's going to be an icon in Developer Tools. So if we go back, it's not here yet. We have to restart Developer Tools, so let's close it out. And I'm going to reload the page and then bring it back in. And now you'll see we have a page speed tab here. So if we click on that, we're going to go to this red button here that says Start Analyzing. And this basically gives us some tips. All right, so I'm not going to enable compression, but I do want to check out the minified JavaScript. And it's basically telling us that if we minify our jQuery file, we could save around 125 kilobytes, or 49% reduction. If we minify Bootstrap, 22 kilobytes, 33% reduction. All right, for the CSS, if we minified Bootstrap CSS, we could save 17 kilobytes. All right, so you can see that there are ways that we can enhance our application speed. All right, now we could minify files ourselves. In fact, I'm going to show you how to minify the script.js file. We're going to use a tool called Closure. All right, so you could put the URL, but we're working on a local machine, so I can't do that. So let's copy that and just paste it in here. And then we'll click compile. And then it gives us the output over here. You'll see the original size is 180 bytes, and the compiled size is 123 bytes. Now this is so small that you probably wouldn't want to compile this, but I'm just showing you that you could. All right, so we paste that in like that. Save that. Now for jQuery and Bootstrap, I guess we could run it through there. I mean, there are minified versions we can download, but just as well we can do it through here. So let's grab, let's see. Let's grab Bootstrap.js. I'm going to just copy everything and then we'll paste it in here. And let's say compile. And let's see, original size 14 kilobytes, compiled size 9.6 kilobytes. All right, so let's go ahead and, whoops. Let's see, I want to select all of this. Wait a minute, what are those warnings? Result of pause operator. That's kind of weird. All right, you know what? Let's actually just download the minified versions, just want to make sure nothing gets messed up. All right, so let's say get Bootstrap. Alright, so let's close that out and I'll go back over here. I'm going to delete Bootstrap and jQuery from the application, and we're going to bring in the Bootstrap min.js. Alright, and then we'll also bring in the Bootstrap min CSS. Okay, now we'll go to jQuery. And let's grab the compressed version. Alright, and we'll bring that over to, bring that to JS. Alright, now we just need to change the index file. So this will be bootstrap.min.css. And let's see, this should be .min and .min. So let's save that. And now let's go back to our application and reload, or do a shift reload. Go to network, and now it looks like we got it down to 131 milliseconds. Oh, 126, 25. Alright, so we're in the 125 to 130 range, it looks like. So we did get it down a little bit. If we look at the jQuery file, you can see it's down to 7 milliseconds. I think it was 11 before. Alright, now these are very small, minor changes or optimizations. Let's see what page speed gives us. Alright, so now it gives us an 84 out of 100 instead of a 67 or whatever it was. Enabling compression. I'm not going to do that, but we could compress the files, I guess. But I think that we got it down pretty good. So I just wanted to kind of introduce you to the network tab and show you the kind of information that it can give you. And if you're working with large JavaScript files, you're probably going to want to look into minifying them. Alright, so that's going to be it. Thanks for watching. Alright guys, so we went over the elements, the inspection, all of that. Now I want to move on to the console. So I have two blank files here, index.html and script.js. Alright, now for the console, we're going to click on the console tab. And the console is basically, it's a logger, and it's also a command line interface. Okay, we can actually type commands in here. So we could say console.log hello, and it gives us back hello. And then the undefined is just because it's not actually returning anything. Alright, and there's a few options in, let's see, let's go to settings and go down to console. You'll see there's some messages here, some preferences, hide network messages. You can log XHR requests, show timestamps, autocomplete from history, enable custom formatters, report events that are blocked for too long, and preserve the log upon navigation. So you have a couple preferences there. Now we can clear the console with the clear function. We can also say console.clear. That'll do the same thing. Now we can filter the different types of logs. So this little filter icon here, and the default is going to be all, so all logs, but we can filter it to errors, warnings, information, logs, debug, and handled. Alright, so we have these different levels of filters that we can apply. Alright, so let's go to index.html. I'm just going to create just a basic HTML document. Alright, let's just say sample app, and we'll put an h1, give it an ID of title. Okay, then we'll just put a paragraph, and we'll say this is my sample app to test the console. Okay, we'll save that. Now I have a script.js file, so let's go ahead and include that. Actually, we're going to include that down in the body. So source script.js. All right, now we can run any JavaScript that we want in this console. So for instance, you saw the console log. We can even say alert, and we can run that. And you see we get this alert pop up. We could do, for instance, a loop. We could do a for loop. Okay, so if we said var I is equal to 0 as long as I is less than 10, then I plus plus, and let's just console.log I. Alright, and you'll see that it loops through and outputs 0 through 9. So just about any kind of JavaScript we can put in here. We can also work with the actual document. So if we say document dot, let's say query selector, and we'll say h1, and you can see that that gives us the HTML that's in the h1. We can also use get element by ID. So get element by ID, and we have the h1, which has an ID of title, and we can get that as well. We can even edit what's in the actual element. So for instance, if we say document dot get element by ID title dot inner HTML equals, and let's put in an h1, and we'll say hello. Okay, run that, and you can see that that has now replaced the h1 element, or the title element. Now, a shorter way to access elements through the console is with a bling. Okay, just like jQuery uses, we can use the bling, which is the $sign. And if we just say in here h1, that'll give us the h1. We can also say ID title. That'll give us the same thing. There's also an inspect function we can use. So if we say inspect bling h1, that'll just highlight that application up here, and it'll also bring us to it in the Elements tab. Alright, and there's also a record kept of the blings. So if we say $0, that gives us 0, $1 gives us body. So the different elements we select actually get saved. Now if we go to, let's clear this out, and if we go to the script.js file, we can log from here as well. So console log, save that, reload, and we get hello world. Alright, so back before we could use Chrome tools, we would have to maybe alert, have to do alerts to see the value of a variable, which can be kind of a pain and just not as efficient as just being able to log it. Alright, we can also log errors. So if we say console.log, and we'll say there was an error. If we reload that, that gets shown up as an error. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant to do console.error. Alright, so there you can tell it's an error because it's red, and it also, you can access the script and the line number. Alright, so you would have some kind of conditional here, testing to see if something was true or false, and then if it was false, for instance, you could send out an error. Alright, let's see. We can also get errors from our script. So for instance, let's say var, we'll say var foo, and we'll set that to null. And then let's try to console.log foo.length. Okay, so if we save that and we reload, we get an error that says cannot read property length of null. Alright, and it gives us the file name and also the line number. Alright, and if we click on that, it'll actually take us in the sources tab, it'll take us to that actual line that's producing the error. So you can see how helpful this is for debugging. Alright, and we can even edit it from here. Now that we see what the problem is, we can go and let's add this to our workspace. And let's just find the folder, which is in C drive, C drive, and then projects, dev tools, and sample2. Okay, and then we just have to click allow so that we can actually edit it. And now what we'll do is we'll just say if, and we're going to wrap the console log. We'll say if foo is not equal to null. Okay, that'll fix the issue. And then we'll do a Control S and save, reload, and now we're not getting an error. And if we go over here to our file, now you'll see that it was actually updated. So this is a really helpful workflow for debugging. Now another really handy tool in the debugger is breakpoints. Alright, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go over here and add some console logs. Okay, so we'll just do 1 through 5. Alright, so 2, 3, 4, 5. And let's save it. And if I reload, obviously we're going to just log 1 through 5. Now, let's go over to sources, and what I want to do is add in a breakpoint. So I want it to end right here. So I'm going to put a breakpoint right after it, and then what we'll do is reload. And if I look in the console, you'll see that we only get 1. Okay, the script is paused. You can see right here it says paused in debugger. Alright, and if I click the resume, it'll just resume the rest of the script. Alright, so if I add another breakpoint, let's say right here, actually we'll just add one there and here. Alright, so let's go ahead and reload. If we look in the console, we get 1. We're paused in the debugger. We can resume it here. We can also go right here and resume it. So if we look now, we have the console log 2. Resume it again. We have the 3. We can resume it again from up here, and it executes the rest of the script. Alright, so you can handpick where you want your script to stop and start. Now, sometimes you might be using a script that's just a mess. That's, for instance, a minified script like jQuery. It's all bunched together on one line, and it's just a mess. So what you can do in that situation, let's just, I'm just going to add some spaces here. Alright, so let's save that. Alright, so you can look down here, and this obviously isn't ideal to work with. So what we could do is just click this right here, this pretty print. Click that, and it makes everything come together nicely. Okay, it opens another tab here that says formatted. So you want to use that if you're using some kind of minified script or just messy code in general. Alright, just undo that. Alright, now to clear this out, to have it stop pausing, we just want to clear out the breakpoints. And reload, and now everything should be running as normal. So as you can see, all of your debugging can be done from Chrome. You don't actually need any kind of third-party tool or anything like that. It's very rare that I use something to help test or fix my JavaScript code other than Chrome. So we're going to go ahead and stop here, and I'll see you in the next video. So there's multiple ways to store data inside the browser, inside the client. And Google Chrome Tools gives us a way to see the data that's stored. Okay, so it used to be in the Resources tab, but they seem to have changed it to the Application tab. So if we click that, you'll see on the left here, we have under Storage, Local Storage, Session Storage, IndexedDB, WebSQL, and Cookies. So these are all ways that you can store data in the browser. Okay, so let's start with local storage. And we have used this in the past in this course. What I'm going to do, if we look at it now, you can see that there's no key value pairs stored in local storage. And we can actually set them from the console. So if we say local storage dot set item, and we set foo to bar, and run that. Now if we go back to application, now you'll see under local storage we get foo for the key and value is bar. Alright, and we can get that as well if we say local storage dot get item foo gives us bar. All right, and of course we can get it from our file too. I have just an index.html with the linked script.js file. All right, so let's go local storage, and we'll set another item here. Set item, and we'll set name to John Doe. Okay, and then we'll just console.log, and we'll say get item name. Alright, so if we reload, whoops, I'm in the wrong file. This is actually sample 3. Okay, so now down here you can see we get John Doe. Now we can also change the key from the application tab. So what I'll do here is for the name, let's actually say edit key, and we'll change it to person. Okay, so now let's comment this out so that it doesn't set name again, and let's get person. Reload, and we should still get John Doe. Alright, so that's local storage. Now session storage works pretty much the same exact way, the same API. The only difference is you use session storage instead of local storage. So let's go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to comment that out. And instead of local storage, we'll say session storage, and let's change this to greeting, and we'll change this to hello world. Alright, then we just want to log it. Greeting, reload, and now if we look under session storage, there's our greeting. And of course we can change the key again. We'll change it to greet, and we'll change this right here to greet, and we should still get hello world. Okay, so that's how we can store and access local storage and session storage. Alright, now notice we also have an area for cookies. So to save a cookie in JavaScript, we can use document.cookie. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll say document.cookie, and let's pass in here, whoops, no, we're not going to do that. We just want to set it equal to, and then we can have key value pairs. We'll say name John Doe. Alright, and then we'll create a variable, and we'll set it to document.cookie, and then let's console.log x. Alright, now if I run this, we look in the console, there's nothing there, and if we look in application under cookies, there's nothing there. The reason for that is when we're using Google Chrome, it won't set the cookie like this because we're just in a file. We're not serving this page from a host. All right, so let's go ahead and install a really easy to use web server. So I'm going to open up my command line in my sample 3 directory, and we're just going to install a module called live server. So you want to say npm install g live server. Alright, just run that. I already have it installed, so I'm not going to run it. And once you do that, you can just say live server, and I'm going to set my port equal to 8000 because the default is 8080, and that port's being used on my system. It may be being used on yours as well. So if we run that, it's going to open up the page in a server on port 8000. Now if we go and look in our console, now you can see it's giving us our cookie of name, which is John Doe. Alright, and if we go to application, go down to cookies, click on that, and you'll see it right here. Alright, and we can see different things. We can see the expiration, the domain, the path. Alright, so we can see different things about each cookie that's stored on the system. Alright, now the last storage method I want to show you is WebSQL, which is a client-side SQL database. There's also IndexedDB, but that's a little more complicated, so I'm not going to get into that. But just know that you can also see those values as well. Alright, so let's open up the Sublime again. And I'm just going to comment this out. Alright, and then what we're going to do here is create a database. And for that, we'll say var mydb and set that to open database. And let's pass in here test db. So it takes in a name, a version, we'll say 0.1, and a description. We'll say test database, and then the size, which I want to be 1 megabyte. So let's do 1024 multiply 1024. So that'll create the database. Then we want to create a table. Oops. And for that, we can take the mydb and we can call .transaction and pass in a function. Okay, we're going to pass along a t right here, and then we can say t.execute SQL, and in here we'll say create, actually put this on all caps, so create table if not exists. We can create a table called users, and we'll say ID, which will be integer primary key. And let's see what else we want to do. Let's do name. We'll just have an ID and a name, so the name will be varchar. And you should, if you've gone through the course already and you've gone through the SQL chapter, then you should know what this is. It's just like MySQL. Alright, so that'll create the table. Then finally, let's insert a record. So we'll say mydb dot transaction. Same thing, pass in a function, pass along a t, and we want to t dot execute SQL. And in here we're going to do an insert. So we'll say insert into users, name, and then values. We're going to use a placeholder here, go question mark, and then we're going to pass in an array with the value. So we'll say John Doe. And actually we need to put a comma right here. Alright, so let's save that, and we'll go and reload. And now if we look under WebSQL, you can see there's a testDB database, there's a users table, and I actually submitted it a couple times. I reloaded it a couple times, so that's why we're seeing 4 of them. You should only see 1 if you only did 1 reload. Alright, but if I keep reloading it, you'll see that it'll add again. Alright, so we know that that's working. Like I said, I'm not going to get into IndexedDB, but these are all methods that you can use to store data in your browser, and you can see them, you can kind of manage them a little bit through Google Developer Tools.